What if the biggest threat to your brain isn't aging? What if it isn't pollution, poor diet, or genes? What if it's your smartphone? Not because of radiation, not because of blue light, but because your brain was never designed to process the sheer volume of information modern technology delivers every day. Imagine that for a moment. Think about your average day. You open your eyes and the world starts pinging. You check messages before your feet touch the floor. You skim emails while brushing your teeth. You scroll social media over breakfast, watching a dozen short videos stitched together by algorithmic design. You respond to a few work notifications. You hop into a virtual meeting. You skim headlines between tasks. You listen to podcasts while commuting. You bounce between news sites, group chats, and streaming recommendations. And when you finally sit down to focus, another alert pulls you away. This is the rhythm of modern life, a constant staccato stream of incoming information. Modern brains are being asked to process more digital input in a single day than many people in previous generations experienced in weeks. We measure that exposure with a single blunt instrument: screen time. 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. But what if that number is misleading? What if the problem isn't simply how long you look at a screen, but how your brain responds while you're looking? Today, we're exploring a frontier of neuroscience that feels both intimate and urgent: digital sensory overload, and how real-time EEG monitoring is helping researchers see what's happening in our nervous systems as we live online. For years, scientists assumed cognitive fatigue came from effort, that the harder you think, the more tired you get. That explanation is elegant in its simplicity, but it misses something critical about modern life. Your brain doesn't just tire from exertion, it tires from processing, from filtering noise, switching attention, evaluating endless snippets of information, prioritizing urgent from trivial, and recalibrating emotional responses. Every ping, every headline, every fleeting notification is a micro-demand on your attentional systems. Is this important? Can it wait? Should I respond? Should I ignore it? Opportunity or threat? These split-second triages happen thousands of times a day, usually beneath conscious awareness. Over weeks and years, they add up, not as dramatic events, but as a slow-loading burden on neural resources. Researchers increasingly describe this as sensory saturation, a persistent state where incoming information outstrips the brain's optimal processing capacity. Think of your brain like a computer. Open one app and performance is smooth. Open 10 and it grinds. Open 50 and everything stutters. Your nervous system has similar limits. The cost of each interruption is real, measurable, and cumulative. To see these costs, scientists turn to EEG, electroencephalography. EEG records the brain's electrical activity through tiny voltage fluctuations generated by millions of neurons firing together. Where MRI shows structure, EEG shows function, the living rhythms of the mind in real time. These rhythms fall into frequency bands with rough functional associations: delta, 4 Hz, deep sleep and restorative processes; theta, 4-8 Hz, memory encoding, drowsiness, and some forms of creative insight; alpha, 8-12 Hz, relaxed, wakeful calm, a quiet, attentive readiness; beta, 13 to 30 Hz, active thinking, focused problem solving, and vigilance; gamma, 30 Hz, fast, integrative processing associated with attention, learning, and binding information. These bands aren't rigid boxes, but helpful signposts. The brain's shifting balance across these frequencies reflects changes in attention, engagement, and recovery. What happens when researchers record EEG while people interact with modern digital environments? They find nuanced and revealing patterns. Not all screen time is equal. A long-form documentary can evoke steady, lower-frequency engagement, more alpha and moderate beta, the kind of sustained attention that feels deep and restorative. A complex work task may raise beta activity as you plan and solve problems. Fast-paced video games and the endless novelty of social feeds tend to spike high-frequency activity, transient surges of beta and gamma, and suppress alpha, indicating repeated bursts of attention and reduced restful awareness. Social platforms in particular are engineered to combine novelty, unpredictability, social reward, emotional content, and rapid switching. From a neuroscience perspective, that's a potent cocktail: repeated activation of attentional and reward systems, moment after moment. The brain evolved to respond to novelty because it often signaled opportunity or danger. Artificial novelty on a conveyor belt taxes those same systems without the adaptive payoff our ancestors would have received. One striking observation is that neural signs of cognitive fatigue can emerge long before you subjectively feel tired. Subtle shifts in alpha rhythms, transient breakdowns in neural efficiency, and altered activation patterns can signal overload hours or even days before you notice mental fog or irritability. In other words, the labor of attention creates a hidden metabolic and regulatory burden on the nervous system. That's where biofeedback and wearable EEG become fascinating and practical tools. Biofeedback gives the brain a mirror. It shows you, in real time, how your nervous system responds to a notification, to deep work, to a breathing exercise, or to a walk in the park. Suddenly, stress, attention, and recovery move from vague, subjective experiences to measurable signals. When a pattern is visible, it becomes trainable. People can learn to recognize the signs of overload, to modulate their responses, and to cultivate rhythms of engagement and recovery. Simple practices: focused work blocks, notification hygiene, micro breaks, breath work, brief walks outside can be tested and refined with objective feedback. Over time, these adjustments can restore neural balance and improve resilience. This matters for longevity because the brain is energetically expensive. Although it's only about 2% of body weight, it consumes roughly 20% of the body's energy. Every attentional shift costs energy. Every interruption costs recovery. Chronic sensory overload can spill over into sleep disruption, dysregulated stress hormones, altered autonomic balance, poorer recovery, shorter attention spans, and lower mood. These are not just productivity problems, they're factors that influence overall resilience and long-term brain health. We aren't saying technology is the enemy, far from it. Technology powers medicine, education, science, and connection. The goal isn't to unplug forever, but to become digitally intelligent, to understand how devices affect your nervous system, and to build systems that protect attentional health. Imagine a near future where your wearable detects the neural signatures of cognitive fatigue before you hit burnout, where HRV, EEG patterns, sleep metrics, and behavioral data come together to tell you when to focus and when to rest, where attentional health is tracked alongside steps and calories, becoming a routine part of personal wellness. That future is closer than you think. At OXYZEN Health Intelligence, we talk about sleep, HRV, recovery, and stress because they're all facets of adaptation, the nervous system's ability to bounce back after challenge. The healthiest brains aren't those that experience the least stimulation. They are the ones that alternate effectively between engagement and restoration, that tolerate stress and recover quickly, that can move from deep focus to relaxed presence without getting stuck in chronic arousal. If there's one lesson to take away, let it be this: the problem isn't screen time. The problem is unmeasured cognitive load. Your brain doesn't tally hours. It reacts to experiences, interruptions, emotional spikes, attentional demands, and opportunities for restorative downtime. Learning to notice and measure these patterns, and then designing your life around them, may become one of the most valuable skills of the digital age. Protecting your attention is protecting your biology. I'm Dr. Yende. Thank you for joining me on another episode of OXYZEN Health Intelligence. Remember, the future of longevity isn't just about protecting your body, it's about protecting your attention. In a world competing for your focus, attention may be your most valuable biological resource. I'll see you in the next episode.